Hello everybody and welcome back to the CodeWrinkles channel for a new video. This time we'll talk about WPF applications. Yes, you heard it right. I usually talk about ASP.NET Core and things related to the web and to the cloud. But recently I started to dig deeper into, how can I develop a desktop application? Because I really I don't have a lot of experience developing desktop applications, so I just wanted to dig deeper into this topic. And one of the first things that I encountered, or topics that sprung my curiosity, was how can I use a dependency injection container in a WPF application? Because the idea of having such a container with services that you can resolve wherever you need them in controls or in Windows or on pages or things like that is very, very appealing from my point of view, because it solves a lot of problems. So I was thinking, how can I get this done in a WPF application? And at first I was thinking that, I might need to use some third-party libraries like Castle Windsor or Ninject or other common libraries that we would normally use in regular .NET framework applications when we want to implement a dependency injection container. But then I was giving a deeper thought about this, and since WPF applications are also available on .NET Core, and in fact what you see here on the screen is a WPF application on .NET Core, and there are some advantages of developing WPF applications on .NET Core. And one of the advantages is that you can actually leverage the advantages that the platform offers to you in order to implement the standard dependency injection container that you commonly use in ASP.NET Core apps. And of course, I was thinking, since we have a generic host in .NET Core, and this is a very important topic because I guess until .NET Core 2.2 or 2.1, there was only a web host in .NET Core, and a web host was of course configured to be used on web applications, so it was not suitable for it wouldn't be suitable for WPF applications. But then .NET Core introduced the concept of generic hosts, where you can build actually your own hosts, and .NET Core provides even a default host that is not tied to any web technology that you can actually use to run your applications. So my idea for this walkthrough is to simply start using these advantages, implement a default host in our WPF application, and in that default host, of course, we could use the dependency injection container that we would have in that specific host. So that's actually what we want to do right now in this video, so let's get started. So at first, I will take a look here in this app.xaml.cs. And app.xaml, if you're not very familiar with WPF applications, this is actually the entry point in your application. And from my point of view, this is also the best place where you could actually create your host, run your host, and of course configure the services that you need for the dependency injection container. So let's get started with it. But before we can get to code things, we have to install a dependency. And then if I go here to manage NuGet packages, I will browse, and there is this package, Microsoft Extensions Hosting. And the cool thing about this hosting package is that it actually contains a lot of the other packages that are needed, like logging, like services and things like that. So if we install this, we actually have everything that we need to implement our own host here in our WPF application, and of course start using the dependency injection container for that. So let's just install this, and we will accept everything that they want to install. Those were all the packages that it basically installs, or that are part of this library, Microsoft Extensions Hosting. And I said that's actually everything that we will need right now. So everything is installed. Now that we have everything set up, like the dependency that we need, we can go back to our app.xaml.cs file, and we can start basically implement all the things that we will need. What I would like to have here is first a private field. Let's make it also read only, and it would be of type iHost. and let's call it host. And then what we would need is of course a constructor where we would get everything going. And before we get further with the constructor, there are some other methods that I would like to use here. So similar to what we know in with what we are familiar in ASP.NET Core, I want to add a configure services method. And let's, of course, we'll make this private. And it would be void, it will return void. It would be called configure services. Sorry for all the typos here. And of course, here in the services, what we would need is to get the service collection. iService collection services. And everything should be fine. And of course, just a little bit later, we'll implement what we want here. But then two other things that I want to do, I want to override some methods on app, which is on exit and on start. So it would be protected override async void on start, on startup, I guess it's called. Yeah, it should be something like that. Let me check again if everything is okay. Here we would also need to have a startup event args. Event args e, and yeah, that should be fine right now. So what do we want to do when the application starts? First of all, we want to start our host, and in this case we would have here like wait host start async. We'll start this host asynchronously. That should do it, and then there are some other things that we might do here a little bit later, but for now, based on startup, we go back to the base startup method, and we have to pass the arguments there, of course. And similarly to what we have here, I would like to add also for on exit protected override async void on exit, I guess it is. And here we need the exit event args, exit event args e. That should do it. And what we want to do here is let's have using, and let's have this host here, and then what we want to actually do here is stop the host. It's wait host or stop async, and here we have to specify also a time span, or no, we don't need to really specify that. Of course, it should be like that. And then after we do this, we can then go to the base on exit and then pass the event args. So this is to just make sure that we start our host when the application starts, and that we basically stop our host when the application stops. So yeah, now that we have this very basic setup here, we can concentrate on creating the host itself and configure the services, of course. So let's do this, of course, in the constructor. In this case, let's define, okay, the host would be equal to host, and for now we'll create a default host builder, or we'll use the default host builder, and then here we have the configure services method on the default host builder, and here we could of course pass in a func. We would get the context, we would get the services, and then of course we can do this here, or it should at least be possible to do that, and then we want to build the host. So that's actually what we want to do. And here we can actually say what we want to do. And here is, we call the configure services method. that we created earlier, so the private one, and we pass in the services that we actually get. So this is the service collection. And then here in this configure services, we can just start like we do in ASP.NET Core to add the services that we want here. Now, one important thing that I want to do here is, and I guess we'll see why just in a second, services add singleton. And what I will do, I will add the main window as a service to this dependency injection container. Now, why I do this is because then in this startup, what we could do is after we start the host, we can just then show the window. And here we would have var, let's see, main window equals, and here would be host services get required service. Where is it? Here it is, of type main window. And the cool thing here is that you can then do something like main window dot show. And from my point of view, this is a very nice thing, because you can add the windows that you have in your applications to this dependency injection container and inject them wherever you need, and you can show those windows in different parts of the applications very easily. Now, one thing that we have to take into consideration is, of course, that there are some things that we would still have to change in the main window here. And here in the main window, let's go back to this main window. What we want to do here is, first of all, well, we can initialize the component, and everything, I guess, should be fine right now. But we'll add something just a little bit later. For now, I just want to make sure that these things work. And here, if I go to the app.xaml, what I want to do is, here is the startup URI, and specify the main window, which should be the startup window. However, since I am showing this window directly from the code behind, I don't need this anymore here. So we can simply remove this, and it actually should still work. Let's start the application, and let's check things out. Hopefully we don't get any error. Now we get here the main window. Of course, we don't have or we don't display things here in the main window. It is a completely blank one, but we'll do some changes here just in a second. For now, it's important to notice that it actually works. And the way that we actually show this window is simply that in this app.xaml.cs, in the on startup, we basically resolve the main window that we added as a service in configure services, and then we showed it. So it was not showing because here we had that startup URI because we removed it, but the window is showing because we show it here. We resolve it as a service, and then we can show it. And that's basically it. Now, to give a little bit more context and to have some deeper insights on how real services might work with that, let's even just go one step forward and create a very basic service together with an interface. So let's create an interface. Where do we have here interface? And let's call this datetime service. And in this interface, we'll expose only one method that returns a string, and this would be called something like get date time string. So that would be the interface, and let's add also an implementation for that. Let's add a new class. We'll call this date time service, and in this class we'll implement the service. So let's we say that it implements datetime service, and then we have to implement this here. And the only thing that we will do here, it's very easy, like more a dummy service. Return date time, get date time now to long date string. So this is what we return from this service actually. Okay, so now that we have all this type of interface and service, what we can do is of course go here and add also this service to the dependency injection container. So it would be services, add the transient, I would say here in this case. The interface is iDateTime service, and the implementation is datetime service. So that should do it. Now the fact that we have this service here, what it actually does for us is that we can right now go in the main window, and if we go here, we can just well, rearrange or do some other stuff here in this main window. First of all, I would like a field, private read-only field, to hold the iData service, because we'll inject this service here similarly to the way that we inject services in controllers in ASP.NET Core. So it will be iDateTime service, datetime service. So we can simply say that in our constructor we want the iDateTime service, and of course after we initialize the component, the window, what we can do here is say that the datetime service equals datetime service, and that should do it. And then of course we want a property where we will get the datetime, public string datetime, and we'll have here a getter, and in this getter we will just return the date from the service, datetime service get datetime string, and that would be it. And of course, since we want to bind this to a text box, so we will also use a setter here, but we won't place things in the setter. We just need it because we need to do data binding. And there is one other thing that we would have to do here is to set the data context in order to have data binding. So it would be, I can say this data context, and this data context should be this, so the window itself, but we can even skip this because it's clear that it's the data context, and it should still be fine. Now I see that I have an error here, and I'm not sure exactly why. Of course I missed a semicolon. Yeah, rookie mistakes happen all the time. And right now that we have everything set up here, we can actually go in this main window and well, add basically a text box here. It would be a very simple one here in this grid. We would basically use, let's do it like that to be sure that we close it. So it would be text box. Let's give it a name. The name should be date time, and we should then specify the text, and the text would be a binding to our date time property. Hopefully it is the correct one. Okay, and right now I would expect that when I start the application I should see a text box actually where I display the date time from the service that we actually injected in this main window in the constructor, just like we do in regular ASP.NET Core apps. So let's see if this is working right now. So it's starting, and indeed we see here the date and the time, which is correct. So what we accomplished right now is that we created a web, not a web host, but a default host in the app.xaml.cs file. And since we have created a host, we are able to configure the services, or in other words, add services to the dependency injection container. And once we add services to the DI container, we can inject them actually wherever we need. In our case, we injected the iDateTime service, just like we do in regular ASP.NET Core controllers, for instance. But in this case, we inject these services in the main window, and we use that service to get some data, in this case some very dummy data, and to display it, to bind it in the UI in a text box in this case. Now, before we wrap this up, there's one more thing that I want to say, is that when we create a host here we just create a default host, which adds a different type of things here, like logging, like reading from configuration files and things like that. And of course we can use this default host, but we can even customize the host the way that we need. So we can add different settings files if we need, we can add different loggers to the application and things like that. But I don't want to make this video too long, and I promise you soon after this one I will do the next video where we will go on and configure our host for a WPF application, to add some logging to it, and of course to also define more advanced services, and to work with configuration files and configuration and settings and things like that, because it's really important. But once you get the idea, the concept on what a host is actually in .NET Core, you can see that it's very easy to implement it even in a WPF application. And in my case, or in this very specific use case, my goal was to be able to use the dependency injection container in order to add my services and resolve the services wherever I need in this application. So this being said, that's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoy this content, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, to hit the thumbs up button, and if you're not shy, and I hope you're not shy, even please feel free and drop a comment right below this video. It will be very important to me, for me to get your feedback. Once again, thank you very much for watching, and until the next time, I wish you only the best.